Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 32 of All Things Metaphysical podcast with Kelly and Gail. So, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly today to get us started.
Um, yeah, I had some experiences lately that I wanted to talk about. I think people need to be aware of. There are so many people, as people get more further along down their spiritual path, as
Mhm.
they become more sensitive, everyone thinks they're a psychic and everyone wants to do readings. And there are many of us who have done this pretty much our whole lives, like myself
Mhm.
and like Gail, whether she wanted to or not. and, and there are a lot of very, very good,
Mhm.
good people who are doing great readings. Um, but when we're doing readings, and this is like rule number one,
Mhm.
step outside of yourself. People do not pay you to get your opinion of what they should do. That's a coach.
Mhm.
That's coaching. That's not doing readings. And that's counseling. That's not doing readings. Um, when you're doing readings and you're not seeing clearly because you're wrapped up in whatever's going on in your life, you can really, really lead people down a wrong path um, if they're not aware enough to see what's happening.
Mhm.
I had such a reading myself the other day. People are always shocked when I say I get readings because I do readings. But yes, we go for confirmation to people we know and trust as well.
Mhm.
So it was someone I know, have loved for years, and usually gives me just great confirmation and insight. And on that particular day, my guides were talking to me. Ego, 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 ego. And anytime your guides, you got to pay attention. Anytime you're hearing from your guides, when you're in the middle of something, if you've got this little voice saying, don't do that, don't do that, don't make that turn, don't listen to this person, don't make that call, whatever it is, listen to them. Because this person talked more about her own situations and trying to relate it to me than anything else during our time together. And it was a little upsetting because no two situations, even for the same person,
Mhm.
no two situations are exactly the same.
Correct.
And if you're sitting there and you're telling someone, well, this is what I did and you should do that too, that's not that's not being of service. That is you telling your story. And that's fine unless you're being paid to listen and tap in to help someone else with theirs. And that was the thing that I really wanted to talk about today because it happened to me. It has happened to almost everyone else I know at
Mhm.
one time or another. And as more and more people start doing readings, it's going to happen more and more and more. And what I did was that's really interesting that you're saying that. That is absolutely opposite of what my guides are telling me. So I'm sensing that there's something going on in your life right now that's bothering you. And we're just going to consider this conversation between friends. And that's where we're going. And that is the kindest thing to do. Sometimes we don't know when we're coming from ego.
Mhm.
Sometimes we have no idea. And sometimes we need to question ourselves. And I did when my guides were screaming, opposite, opposite, don't do that. Um, it's difficult sometimes, especially when it's someone you're close to, especially when it's someone that you have trusted in the past,
Mhm.
going back a decade with this person. And it was a little bit kind of took my breath away for a minute
Mhm.
because it made me, well, this is someone I really trust. Maybe they know more than I do. Maybe this is what I should be thinking.
Mhm.
And it derailed me for probably 12 hours.
Mhm.
And it was just kind of shocking to me that this person everybody is entitled to an off day.
Mhm.
She was having an off day, that's all it is. But it made me think about how many other people are just starting out and they're just starting to use their gifts and
Mhm.
they really have the best of intentions. They really, really, really want to help, but they don't know how to
Mhm.
step outside of their ego. Now I know what I do. I question myself. I'm like, you got to help me out here, universe, guides, angels, aliens. Make sure what I'm seeing is true and pure and right for this client. And that's what I do. What do you do?
Well, it's funny because I'm the person that everyone goes to after they have those readings.
Mhm.
And how I've always answered that is one, a good reading isn't going to make you afraid of anything, even if
Right,
it's not good news. There's ways to put it across where you can say, this is one of the options I'm seeing, depending on the choices that you continue to make. I had a coworker who got scammed out of $10,000 because she had a curse that needed to be lifted and there was negative energies around her that needed to be cleared. And then I had another coworker who they kept telling her to take baths with all these special ingredients and they needed to pay her like $3,000 every time they talked. And again, a good reading isn't going to do any of those things. For me, the way that I've always characterized it is a good reading is um, I'm telling you things you already know that there's no way that I could know.
right, right.
And it's more about validation. And yeah, there's negative things that come up. Like I've had to give people, well, like I told one lady, I said, you're going to lose your job in like 3 weeks, but don't worry, there's a new one lined up 6 weeks from now. And it's all going to work out. Just try not to panic when that happens. And sure enough, like 3 months later, I get this phone call. You were so accurate. It was scary. I lost my job. I remembered what you said, and I did. I had a new job 4 weeks later.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's ways of delivering it. And then let's not leave out the people who take a tarot class online and think that they can do readings. And I've been to some of those people and I've basically said to them, you're a fraud. You're bilking people out of money. You have no idea what you're doing. And they just look at me and they're like, oh my God, you are the real deal.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a concern to me as
Mhm.
well. The thing that got me a year, maybe 2 years ago, maybe may have been 3 years ago by now, relatively recently, I
Mhm.
taught a class on the weekend on how to tap into your intuition, on spirituality, and how do you know when you're getting the right messages, and how do you do all this? The Monday morning, literally the Monday morning, I wrapped up class Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Introductory class. One of my students is posting online that she's an expert and she can do this, and it just everyone wants to, and I have to believe that most of these people really come from a place of wanting to help. But
Most of them,
yeah,
yes.
but sometimes if you're not fully trained, you can do more harm than good.
Mhm. You know, it's funny. I was talking with you about I have this opportunity to take a class, and I don't usually do well in classes. My presence usually causes people a lot of issues because they're always like, "How can she do this and I can't? And she can do this and I can't." And I'm like, I don't really want to get into any of that again. However, this class seems different, and we had to have a session with the teacher to see if we were a good fit. And so today I was talking to her, and I'm just like, I know you. I haven't, well, I have since figured out where I know her from, but as of this afternoon, I hadn't. And she's like, yeah, I was looking in your eyes and I felt it too. So, I mean, it's like finding that connection because people are brought into your lives all the times, whether it's a reader, whether it's a coach, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a doctor. there's usually a reason why you pick the people that you do. You may not be conscious of
Right.
it. And if you're picking these people that you're having bad experiences with readings, then you really need to look at what's going on within you that this is what you're creating.
Right. Right. And that was the thing that I went through right after my experience was why did I want this to happen? And all of my guides were screaming to me, because you have us. You know, we're giving you the answers. You're not listening, or it's not the answer you want, you know. And that's the issue that I have repeatedly with my within myself. Is yeah, you know, I trust and I believe and all that stuff, but I think I have a better way. And they like to smack me around and say, no, you really don't. You really don't.
Like
But
you're like people go to expos a lot of times and they'll
yeah,
go have readings and things. And welcome to our viewers. If you have questions, please feel free. We started a couple minutes early. Please feel free to jump in and ask questions and say hi. Like when I go to an expo, I can usually energetically tell who's going to be a good fit for me and who's not. And sometimes I've had the experience where the person I really want to see has a huge line. So I'm like, I'll just go to this person. And I'm like,
right.
shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I should have stayed in the line.
Trusted my
Yep.
gut.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. And even during the middle of when all of this was happening, I was sitting there going, she's coming from ego. She's coming. This is not, this is all about her. This is not, this is, yeah, okay. You know, but it happens. And the reason for sharing this story really for me is to let everybody know that it does happen,
Mhm,
particularly if you're going with somebody who is new.
mhm.
Always check out who you're going to. If they tell you up front, you know what, I'm just starting out. I kind of need the practice. I would appreciate it if you know, go along, correct me if I'm going down the wrong path. I used to do that all the time. Um, that's an honest person who will probably end up being a fabulous reader.
So my experience is like people will come to me, and my favorite saying, "Does that make sense to you?"
Right.
That's what I used to say as a therapist all the time, and I say that as a reader all the time. Like, does that resonate with you? Does that make sense to you? But where was I going with that? I actually had a point in that, but now I don't remember. It's out
Well,
my
I think there's always room for improvement. No
mhm.
matter how long you've worked in some capacity, you can always learn more. You can always get better. And I think that's just human ego saying, oh, I know everything there is to know. I don't know anything at this point. You know, the older I get, the more I study, the more I work, the more I realize I know nothing.
Like, I've had people I've done a reading for them, and they're like, "Can I call you in a couple weeks?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can, but that's a coaching session at this point because nothing is going to change that quickly." I
Right.
ethically won't do readings more than, like, every 6 weeks to 2 months apart because
Yeah.
you need time for things to change a little bit. And so I'm like, "Yeah, if you really wanna do that, I'm not gonna call it a reading, though. I'm gonna call it a coaching session because
Right.
not much has happened in 2 weeks usually."
Right. And sometimes depending on the circumstance, that's the same way with energy work.
Mhm.
You need to allow time for everything to settle and be integrated. And a lot of people don't want to do that. You know, I had one person a while back was wanting to schedule every single day. I'm like, you're not getting the most you can get because you're not allowing things to settle.
Mhm.
And sometimes that works. I don't know why I'm supposed to talk about this, but that sometimes that works with manifesting too. People get frustrated.
Mhm.
You can't, you have to allow time when
Mhm.
you're making any change, no matter what it is. It can be your health, it can be finances, it can be your love life, whatever it is. You have to allow time for things to integrate. And if you're constantly go, 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 you know, I want this, you end up hurting yourself.
Mhm.
Because when you asked the first time, when you worked the first time, you
Mhm.
got an answer, you just didn't hear it, or you didn't want to hear it, or you didn't listen to it. And when you don't allow things to settle, you're just spinning your wheels. It's not going to happen. You're just making yourself more ungrounded and more aggravated. And then you're putting that out into the universe because the universe responds to energy.
Mhm.
not necessarily you're over here trying to run in the sand to make something happen, you know?
It's just really interesting because we're in difficult times, and sometimes people just keep hanging their shingles up, and it's like, well, this sounds really interesting, or they spin it in a really good way. And so, like, when I was having this call with the coach, because I took something with her over the weekend, and I'm like, yeah, I could tell you exactly how everybody in the group was feeling just from like being in the group with them. She's like, you can do that, and I'm like, uh-huh. So you really need to know who you're going to, like, look them up. If you're
Yeah,
in an expo, trust your gut or read their bio or something like that. Just because they're free doesn't mean that's the right person for you.
right. And sometimes, and I've seen this at an expo, sometimes people will have a picture out, in front of their table or wherever they are, and I'll put my hand up to the picture. And I can tell you everything you would ever want to know and some things you didn't want to know about that person. And I went to an expo and everyone had pictures except for this one person. And I was like, well, this is intriguing. Why do you not have your picture out? And the response I got, and this was a man, he says, well, because I have found that people will walk by my table and they'll just read my picture and then go on. Well, okay. And I bit and I went, okay, fine, we'll do this. And he was wonderful.
Mhm,
But his past experience has been that at expos, people will choose the woman over him
mhm,
every time. So he's trying to make himself more intriguing by not giving you too much. It worked for him, at least as far as I was concerned. Um, it's everybody is hanging up a shingle these days. I said back when the real estate market was going like gangbusters, and people were buying land out here in the middle of nowhere with no future, no nothing. This place was just like this in 1950. This place will be just like this in 2050. And they were buying land out here because it was cheap. Well, that's why it was cheap. And then people would come back and say, well, I didn't know that's why it was cheap. But during that time, every person out here had a real estate license. It was ridiculous. An area of 500 people had 400 real estate licenses. And it was, I think that's kind of what's happening with
mhm,
readers right now. I think a few people have gone out there saying, I can make a quick buck doing this. And that's their motivation.
mhm.
And that's all they're after. And then I get people calling me, yeah, I had a reading from so and so, and wow, that was really what. That's why. So do
Mhm.
your research. Um,
And I think
yeah,
it goes with anything in life, do
yeah,
your research, know what you're getting into. And if you're just doing it for fun or you just want to see what comes up, but like I've had people who've told me they've gone to readers and they've given them messages from loved ones who've crossed over, which were mean. And like, I'm like, well, one, loved ones would never do that. They would never give you messages like that because they're coming from a place of all love on
right.
the other side. So I just think you need to just have common sense.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to say something, go back a little bit. You
Mhm,
were talking about the person who was trying to pay off a hex or a spell against them. And I laughed when you said it. And the reason I laughed is because in doing paranormal investigations, quite often I have done battle with dark spirits, demons, entities, whatever you want to call them. And you know what we charge for that? Nothing. We ask for a donation, which
mhm,
honestly goes to the church
mhm,
that the guy that I work with has. And if you know that you have an issue with an entity or darkness or a trickster guide or whatever that is, you can always find someone willing to help you for nothing or for a nominal fee.
mhm.
Anytime I hear people talk about paying thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, what goes off in my head is that's a scam. And Yeah, maybe they did do something, but you have to look at what if you were in desperate situation
Mhm.
and you couldn't pay that? Would they just turn you away? And if so, you have to question everything about them because
Well,
I really don't think that you should be paying that much.
I think that there's also an energy exchange of some sort. It doesn't always have to be money,
Right.
but there's some sort of energy exchange that needs to always happen in any kind of transaction that we have. Because
And
when things are sometimes one sided,
yeah.
oftentimes people don't really do what they need to do then or keep it however they need to keep it.
And that's true too. But I think there's got to be some kind of an exchange that maybe not everybody can afford to give you $10,000 to get rid of whatever. And I know people that I have worked for and helped, to me, especially if there's a kid involved,
Mhm,
that's my energy exchange. Knowing that they are okay and they are happy. That's what I get out of it.
mhm,
And I will tell you, there is no better feeling for me
mhm,
than knowing I have truly made a difference in the life of someone else.
mhm.
So I think not that that's the way everyone should look at it because everyone is different. But I think when you're talking about money that a lot of people just don't have, I had someone tell me one time, well, just tell them to put it on a credit card. No, I'm not going to do that. It just, you have to look at what you're getting, not always through the eyes of our money grubbing society.
Mhm,
And there really is, if you set your sights on, I am open to receiving what I need from this interaction, you're always going to get something if you go into it like that.
mhm,
May not be what your preference would be, but if you are open to walking into it with, I will accept whatever exchange that I am supposed to receive.
mhm,
I have had people come back months and months and months later and want to pay me cash.
mhm,
But at that time, I knew they didn't have it and I knew they needed the help.
mhm,
So if you go into it open, where I'm not all about getting the money for doing this, you're always rewarded. Always.
mhm.
Now, if you go in there, well, I want this amount of money and this is what it's going to cost, and there is no other option.
I just wonder is a different kind of because here's the question that goes to my mind. So do different kinds of demons or negative energy cost different amounts to get rid of?
Right, right. No, they don't. Yeah.
How do you classify that?
Right, right. And I know because of the time I've spent in New Orleans and around that area, I know a lot of people who have dabbled in voodoo.
Mhm,
And one of the things they will always tell me is it is like any other religion. You can use it for good or you can use it for bad. And the big laugh that they have for tourists in New Orleans is people will walk into the voodoo museum and they will say, I have a voodoo curse. What will it cost me to have it lifted? They're like, how do you have a voodoo curse?
mhm,
Well, that's got to be what it is. Okay. Have you ever been around voodoo? Well, no.
mhm,
Okay. Let's think this through, shall we? And sometimes people convince themselves
mhm.
that they have that this person cursed them or that person did this or I had someone convinced that they had a demon in their house because they watched paranormal TV shows. Uh did you hold the paranormal TV show live in your house? Were you filming in your house? No, you were watching it on TV. Here's the thing about dark entities, any entity really. They have to be invited. The thing about vampires, you must invite them into your house. Demons are the same way. Tricksters are the same way. In some capacity, you have to invite them into your house. And the way you do that is by inviting anything to help you. If you are not specific when you are trying to manifest or when you're walking around trying to bless a place, I've seen people accidentally invite a darkness in by trying to bless their house, because they're not calling in beings of 100% divine love and light.
Mhm.
They're saying, everybody who wants to help me, no, don't do that. You know, and it's just a lack of knowledge.
Mhm.
It's not that they're intending to do this, but it's a lack of knowledge. And I really think part of my purpose is to make sure people have the knowledge they have.
Mhm. So we have quite a few viewers right now. So if you guys have any questions or have things that you want us to talk about, please put it in the comment section and we will answer them. And welcome to all the people who are viewing us right now.
Yeah, that's great.
Where I am right now, it's a dreary, rainy day. And it's days like today that just make me want to go inward and
Mhm.
like retreat and really do like inward work or maybe create a mandala or do something else. So it's just interesting. I was very antsy through my work day today and I couldn't wait for it to be over. So for
Yeah, I remember
various
those
reasons.
days. I remember those days. I do. Um, I think there's a lot of energy fluxes happening right now because there's a big shift coming, and everybody, we keep hearing about the big shift. And when I was meditating this morning, because I've been off for days, and a lot of it is the wind that I have had here. When the wind picks up a 40-pound dog on a cushion that is outside and moves that dog and the cushion 10 feet, it's a tough breeze,
Mhm.
and it aggravates my immune issues. So I've been off. And this morning when I was meditating, what I kept hearing is, surprisingly enough, not patience. It was, this is passing. It's passing now. Those of you who are antsy and feeling like, something's got to give, and the angst and the, not necessarily anger, but kind of the, I'm tired of hurrying up and waiting.
Mhm.
Um, we are in the midst of the flux right now. So just like, the wind happens here when the seasons change, because you've got the cold air moving out, the warm air coming in. It's the same way energetically a lot of the time. And that's what we're in the midst of,
Mhm.
is that actual changing happening. And it's not a very comfortable place to be. It just isn't.
Mhm.
So I think that's playing into your stuff at work.
Oh, it doesn't take much to play into my stuff at work. As you know, every day is a new adventure,
It is. It
and I
is.
don't know what's coming at me, and it's always a challenge. At least I can say that every day it's not the same thing every day, so I don't get bored, and I don't know what's going to get thrown at me on a given day, and always keeps you guessing and on your toes. Good for neuroplasticity and
Yeah. Yeah. Always look for the positive. Yeah.
sometimes I'm really good at that, sometimes not so much. Today seems to be one of the days I'm doing better with it.
Yeah, I've been so busy with animal rescue stuff, it's ridiculous.
Mm,
And I have to stop periodically because I start getting overwhelmed, and
mhm,
I start getting, who are these people who are refusing to spay and neuter their animals? And every year I
mm,
seem to be getting litters of kittens and puppies from the same family. Like,
mm,
there is a problem here. And I have to stop and say, you know what? They think they're doing the best they can do. So, what I'm doing is trying to get enough money together so that I can take their animals and have them spayed and neutered, because clearly they are not going to do it themselves.
mhm,
And, I look at these kittens and I look at these puppies and I go, I can't do all this. I can't do all this. And then invariably, a friend will call me and say, hey, that last dog I was fostering just got a forever home, so I'm open. Yay. But if I don't stop
mhm.
and take stock of why am I doing this? It gets very overwhelming. And sometimes I wonder why I'm doing this. But but then, I have to go back to why did I start down this road?
Mhm.
Why was this so important to me? And then the moment passes and I can move on and find a new foster home and life is good again. But I think there are so many people right now, lately, who haven't given themselves that break.
Mhm.
It can be a split second break. It can be just, okay, why am I doing this?
Well, I mean, the truth is, like, I haven't taken a week off of work, and I think other than when I've had surgery or something like that, I've taken a week off. Otherwise, I'll take 2 or 3 days off of work. So I'm forcing myself to take a week off. I shouldn't say forcing myself. I'm allowing myself to take a week off of work the first week of May.
Good.
That is gonna
Yay.
be really interesting. So we may have to change the day of the podcast that week, but
That's
that is
fine.
gonna be really interesting because I haven't done that, and I won't take, like, my work computer because 'cause I'm gonna go away. I'm not gonna take my work computer, and they're not gonna be able to contact me, and I'm not gonna have to solve any problems for anybody other than for myself, and I can't remember the last time I did
You are way overdue.
that.
Way overdue.
That's what I keep hearing from everybody. So, yeah.
It's true. You're way overdue. Good for you for doing that for yourself.
You
Because
know,
you
one of the things though, and I'm gonna change the tone a little bit if that's okay, and I realized this the other day, is I haven't wanted to do that because then I miss my parents who've passed away, and then it gets really hard for me. I mean, I'm good for 2 or 3 days, but, like, when I take off an extended amount of time, and then I just really connect and I'm open, I start getting so many messages and so many downloads. And I'm like, what do I do with this stuff? What am I supposed to do with this stuff? Where's this all coming from? And
Yep.
so sometimes it's easier to just not open Pandora's box. However, it's going to be wide open the first week of May.
And sometimes we need that.
Hmm.
It continues the healing process.
Yeah.
And there are so many things that people, they do shove it in a box and close the lid and stick it in the bottom of a closet and forget about it.
Hmm.
Um, and you have to unpack it every once in a while just so that you can continue the healing. And it's tough. I know it is. It's rough, but it's it's needed. It's needed. I know my ex and I used to go on cross country Harley rides,
Hmm.
and we were in the middle of, I don't know, I think Utah, and heading for the Oregon coast. And very clearly in my head, I had one of my cats say goodbye to me. And it was just very clear. And I could see her and I could see that she had died. And I could see the other cat kind of pawing at her, like, wake up and play with me. And it was that moment that I realized how I hadn't thought about anything. My mind was wide open. I was just, look, there's a cloud, It was very serene. And I think that's what it took for me
Hmm.
to connect with that animal and let her come to me. Usually they come to me when I'm asleep,
Hmm.
but this was just, I was just wide open going down the highway on the back of a bike. And every once in a while I take a picture. But
I
so
find that's where I get my best messages oftentimes is when I'm on a road trip, just
yeah,
driving and driving and driving, and you're in like the zone or listening to
yep.
music or a podcast. And all of a sudden you start getting these messages. It's like, that's really interesting.
Mhm. Yeah. But we need to allow ourselves that time
Mm.
because we get so caught up in the day to day. I have to do this, and we don't allow ourselves. Even if we meditate,
Mhm.
sometimes we don't go deep enough to really be as wide open as we should be during a meditation.
Mhm.
Sometimes I do that deliberately, quite frankly, because sometimes, more comes through than I'm.
Well, when I used to meditate frequently, because I don't meditate. Everyone thinks it's funny I don't meditate, but I create these mandalas, which is my meditative
That
state.
is meditating.
When I used to like formally meditate, God only knows where I was traveling to. I mean, because I would get jerked back into my body, and I'm like, huh, I've been gone for an hour. Where have I been? So it was after that that I kind of stopped formally meditating. But when I first started creating the mandalas, I always had music on, and now I find that I draw them without a lot of times
Mhm.
without music. And I'm just in that zone with whatever messages come through with it or so it's just interesting how our gifts and abilities change as we
Mhm.
change. Like I used to think about how I used to get messages and like I used to always get chills on the left side of my head when something was really true. And once in a great while, when I'm communicating with someone from the other side, I'll still get that. And I'll go like this, and everyone's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I have chills on the left side of my head again."
Yep.
But the way I get messages now is just so different. And I think if I could help anyone, just realize that as you go down the path, the way that you get information changes,
Yeah.
and that's okay. It doesn't have to stay the same.
Right. I used to do a lot of automatic writing,
Mhm.
and I haven't in, boy, a long time. But that was how I would always connect. And
Mhm.
I felt like I needed to be doing something in order to connect. I didn't feel like I could just sit and be still and
Right.
receive messages. I had to be doing something. So I would do automatic writing, and it does change dramatically. Now when I sit down, and I tried it the other day, and it was like, well, this is just weird, so that doesn't work as well anymore. But that used to be my method.
Mine,
Um,
mine as well. And it's funny because, like, when I create the mandalas, the channeled mandalas for people, it's really funny because I used to draw the image first and then get the message. Or sometimes I'd get the message in the middle of creating the mandala and I'd stop and write it down so I didn't forget it. Now I usually get the message first
mhm,
and then create the mandala. So it's just really interesting, like I said, how things change.
yeah,
Maybe it's because they know I finally trust that the mandala is not going to disappear anymore. So now they just sometimes give me the message first, or sometimes it depends who I'm doing it for, because sometimes part of the message will come at the beginning, part will come in the middle, and then when I'm done, I'll get the rest of the message for them.
yeah,
So it's just really interesting because each person's energy that you tap into, with their permission, of course, is always different.
yeah,
And so the way that I get information for each person and their mandala is different too. Same with readings. The way I get information and how fast I talk is different as well.
right, right. I had, I have a regular client
Mm.
that I talk to maybe once every couple months and do readings with, and her father came through right before her last reading was scheduled.
Mhm.
And he came through and he just wanted to talk to me. And I'm like, what? She's scheduled on Tuesday. Can we do this then? And he says, she's not going to be available on Tuesday. I need you to call her tomorrow. Okay. And I contacted her and I said, would it be okay if do you have time tomorrow? And she said, yeah, that would be better. My husband had a fall and he's having surgery on Tuesday. And I'm like, you could have told me that, He didn't give me a reason. He just said she wasn't going to be around. And every once in a while, if I have done more than a couple of readings for the same person, there are people just start, you know, hi, just say hi. I'm like, go away. You're not
Well,
even
they
here.
also they also do that too, and I get that a lot is because they know that you can see them.
Yeah,
And so sometimes, they'll just go to whoever's available because they can see them. And, I think it's this has taken me a long time to get here, but just being able to do what I do and be able to help others learn how to do it or continue to move down their path, I think has been the greatest gift of my life so far.
Yeah. It's the helping people. You
Mhm,
know, my whole life I've been more connected with animals,
mhm,
even plants actually, than most people. And that changed. I picked up a dog at a shelter that had no business being in a shelter. He was going to kill himself in the shelter,
mhm,
um, and he had been a stray that they had picked up and taken. He belonged to a homeless person.
mhm,
And he was telling me when I got him in my car, he was telling me about how I had to help his father. His daddy needed help. He needs help. Somebody help him. And I'm like, I'm thinking, your dog, father? Is there another dog that's a stray? And he was showing me pictures. And I turned around and I went back to the shelter and I said, I need to know exactly where this dog was picked up. And then I walked the dog down the road until I found who he belonged to and made sure that that man got into a shelter. And sometimes that turned my entire life around.
mhm.
At that moment, I realized there were people that needed me too. And I felt like I was really helping that dog more by keeping him with his family than with taking him and giving him a whole new life.
Mhm.
And I that made all the difference in the world to me. And I went home that night and I was just like, everything changed. Everything changed. And then I started working more with people. And
Mhm.
I started doing things with like battered women shelters and homeless shelters and that kind of stuff. We don't have a lot of that here where I am now. This was in San Francisco, where they have a lot of that. But it proved to me that no matter how adamant you are that you're on you're helping the right things, if there's something bigger for you, it won't go away.
Mhm.
That's that thing. If it is really your calling, it'll keep calling till you answer. That was my wake up moment. And that's when I started doing things like paranormal investigating and helping people
Yeah,
who
you can't pay me enough to do that.
oh,
Took a
you should come out. You'd be just as effective as the guy I'm working with now.
Probably. Well, I was on this trip to Ireland, and we kept going to haunted castles. So about the third day, I had on 2 pairs of pants, 3 pairs of socks, like, 3 jackets, and I'm like, "I'm still freezing from all this energy. I can't do this anymore." Because my body temperature would every time, depending on where we were and how many spirits were there, my
Yep.
I would get so cold from all the energy, and it was just like they're like, "What is wrong?" I'm like, "I'm just gonna go wait in the van while you guys traipse around this one." But it was just really interesting to me.
What's
Um,
interesting is that they were cold. You were cold. Nothing to worry about usually if you're cold. It's when you start getting fluxes of heat that is the
well,
problem.
that happened occasionally too, but mostly when especially of the light, I get really cold really quickly. There's times where I'll get hot when people are struggling or there's physical stuff going on or things like that. I'll get really hot, but most time I sense things as cold. So, anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up another episode?
I don't think so. Something is messing with my hair, but that's not unusual, truly.
All right, everybody. We will see you all next week. Have a good week until then. Again, any questions come up, reach out to us and we will cover it on the next episode. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.